Yes, I'm very excited for tonight. Guys, normally, if you've been here for a few of these, we typically just have one speaker. But as we were getting ready for this quarter, we were looking at our list and all of the schools and everyone that was being brought in. And I didn't quite know what to do when this week came around. Because I saw the names on the list and you're like, how do you just invite one of them? So thank God we worship a creative God. The humility is starting already. But we worship a creative God who's like, why don't you just talk to them both? And I was like, that is a great idea. What do I talk to these two people about that have never met each other before? And just tonight, we're going to go through, we've been going through the YWAM legacy words. And one of those being the spheres. And so tonight, we're going to kind of talk about the sphere of religion. That goes far beyond the walls of our campus, far beyond YWAM, the local church. It is in totality, all the things that the church is putting its hands to globally. And I just saw these two. We have a local pastor with us from Scotland, and we have a missionary from South Africa who are both here and just going what does it look like as we do this in partnership? And you're thinking don't we have local churches around here, and aren't we also a YWAM base? Yes. And isn't it just so fun to get to sit and receive from others? And so tonight, I was thinking about this earlier, I'm going to celebrate these guys like crazy because I know what they do. I love what they're doing. They've been friends for a number of years. And so just to clear the deck, that isn't when I go, man, what Rehope Church and Brian and his team and all these guys are doing up there is absolutely incredible. It doesn't mean that I don't think other churches are incredible, right? And when I go celebrate what the guys down in Potchefstroom are doing and the vision and the crazy things they're carrying, I'm not being dumping on our base or any other YWAM base. So I just I know you're I would never think that, but you're all it takes is one person to think that. So I cleared the deck, that's gone. We can just have a fun conversation now, yeah? Praise God. Okay, so yeah, tonight. So we have Brian. He is one of the founding pastors of Rehope Church up in Glasgow. You have 4 campuses now? 5? 6? You added more?
Yeah, we've added more.
Praise God. That's amazing. How many?
I think 6.
6, okay. And then these guys, you guys pass the mic back and forth. Unfortunately, I'll just...
6. And
6.
You don't know this yet, but
I don't.
Our latest one...
Uh-huh.
So, many of them stream the sermon, wherever. Our latest one is in Ghana.
Wow.
So we have several in Scotland and then Ghana. It's a story.
Okay.
I can tell you about it.
I'm excited to hear that one.
Yeah.
I think when we met I think you guys were about to buy or in the process of buying the Paisley one.
Which is incredible. That's my wife, by the way. She does all the hard work. Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah, I said, could you or Kelly do this? And he jumped immediately and said, me.
No, that is not it. That is not it at all.
But yeah, so Brian and his team doing amazing things. And they are probably one of the most missionally minded churches I have been around. And the fact, we'll get into this a little bit more, but their church is full of YWAMers who've done DTSs on staff as well. Yep. Every time I go there, I feel like I meet some new people who have just jumped on your team full time. And you're I just came back from this country after serving for this many years. And it's incredible to see that up there. And then Rebecca I've known Rebecca for, 12 years. She did DTS with my wife, Jess. She staffed my DTS. She was our school leader when we staffed. And Rebecca's just been a really good friend and even spent the last Christmas with us up here and loves the UK. And
love the UK.
Rumor is, might be some sort of lineage back to the throne. Yes?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, so we have royalty amongst us. So it's just fun to have these guys in the history. And so, Brian, I'll start with you. I got a question for you as we get going. I got to get this out because I'm going to forget my questions. But like I said, we were able to meet Brian and his team through I feel a very random series of events. We had a friend that went up and visited. I think it was your daughter, and through some other connections, went up there and visited you guys in your church. Some people came down here for a few weeks. We had a send event heading into Norway that you guys couldn't get to. And then this is where I was this is a bold man and a very trusting man. Because the next thing I get is an email, maybe a month or so later, from one of your campus pastors, Lauren, going, hey, we couldn't make it to the send event all the way down here towards London. Would you guys come up and do something for our church? And then not only that, we got to bring a team. The Laytons came with us. Beth and Jonas, Ellison, like a number of people that are still here came up. We got to do some stuff with them for a whole week. But not only that, you asked us to do a Send event just for your church. And then on top of that, like the graciousness and the trust, I think, to hand 3 strangers the services across all of your campus at the time. I was like, there's something special on this guy. Because you have no idea what I'm going to go up there and say. You have like maybe one person vouching for me. But I'm curious to with having said all that, how do you guys create that missional culture that I feel like your church carries? Like you took not only were you interested in the Send well before it came to the UK, but you brought a bunch of people to Norway to go check out what this whole thing was about. And that to me communicates it's more than just this seems like a fun event to go to. That tells me that there's something deep in the foundation of who you guys are and what you do as a church.
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Glad to be
Give
here.
you a chance to.
I want to very much downplay in many ways any credit going my direction on this one. We have an amazing team, but you're right to say that there is something deep in the church. There's a DNA in the church that causes someone like Laura to really champion. Let's go to Norway, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. But there has been something from the very beginning about this missional thing. Part of it is because I wasn't born in Scotland. Hard to tell.
Yeah,
hard to
never
tell.
know.
My wife wasn't born in Scotland. We were born in the Seattle area, and so we had a call to God to be missionaries. And even though we came to Scotland, and we've been there for 22 years, there is a reality here where that missionary call is deep in who we are, and then there's a like attracts like. We love Scotland, we love the local church, but we also understand that we've got a big planet here, and that there's a heart for this. The first person that came to Christ in our church, a guy named Dan, first thing he said is, I would have never come to this church if I knew you were an American. Second thing, but he became a Christian that day, right? So what do you do? And then the next thing I know he's joining our church as an intern. And this Dan guy, he had this, he made a statement one day that impacted our whole church. And he said, Brian, let's pray for 1,000 people to leave our church.
Wow.
Now we only had 40 people, so that was a lot of that's a high percentage right there of people. And let's just start praying now that 1,000 people will go with the gospel. And we just started picking this up. And so from the early days of the church, what is the impact of just praying for 1,000 to leave, especially when you're 30 or 40 people, 1,000 to go? Dan ended up being one of those. He went to Korea and he became a missionary in Korea. But there is this ongoing prayer in the background. At the same time, we would meet people and who had been to, for instance, YWAM, and they came in. And as a pastor, we get the joy of hiring people from time to time. And who do you look for your staff? Do you look for somebody with this training or that training? And what I found is the people who came out of YWAM had the kind of training that you really want around you. They knew how to pray. They knew how to believe. They knew how to have faith. They cared about the nations. And so you're bringing them in on the staff. But I'm not looking for people who can do all the Greek stuff. I took too many of that. I did all that. But it's looking for the people who know how to do the things that make the impact. And so we started hiring people from early on. What's your background? What's summer? Not YWAM? Yes. Let's bring it. And so you start filling your team and your staff with people who have been influenced by DTSs and gone in different places in the world, and they have a better mindset. And it's just contagious, and it grows. And I don't have any idea what the question was that he asked me.
Yeah.
But those are core foundational things from the beginning. And when you have people on your staff that are talking about their experience in the nations, and you have these little kids like my daughter, who is growing up with this kids pastor who has this love for the nations, who talks about her time in the nations, then she grows up and she goes to DTS and goes to SBS and like all these things. It just becomes this powerful cycle. So how did we end up going to this end? Ultimately, there is just this sense of a love deep in our church for God's kingdom. We know that we need to be about God's mission where we're at, but we know that it's so much bigger than where we're at. And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Did I get anywhere close?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
That was good. And so I got one more for you before we pass it off. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's a quick follow-up, but I think in that, you kind of touched on this, but I've been able to, from afar, watch you guys be so releasing as a church. And I think you kind of said that we were praying for 1,000 would go. Sure. But even like I've watched multiple campus pastors take sabbatical and go do second level schools because like you said, that maybe they were already done a DTS or go do their DTS. And there's a danger in that I think there's so often that, I don't know, when we've stepped into YWAM, there's this like, I'll just go do anything kind of mindset. And sometimes in the church, you're like, it's so hard to find such high quality disciplers, people who will champion like and buy into, even like rebuilding the vision that you have. And this is what we're doing here and those kinds of things. But you guys have been so releasing in that. And so maybe, I don't know if you have anything to add from what you kind of just touched on there, but how do you stay in that soft-hearted place to be like, go do a DTS. We may never see you again.
Yeah, two things that if you want to save yourself a lot of frustration in life and in ministry, you want to do it open-handed. When you try and make sure it's the way that you want it to go or that the people are committed to being there for a long time, and if you're freaking out when people are leaving or when they're going, like, it's just going to cause you needless misery. People spin around. God moves his people around. And you got to keep your hand open. And that's not just for the people who want to go. It's for the people, you got to, if you love your people, like let's use Laura for an example. She's our lead pastor at the West End Church, very close to Kelly, and the two of them really do a lot with Liz. If you care about them, then you care about not just what they're doing for you, in this case, as a pastor of the church. You care about God's trajectory for their life and God's development for their life. And it was a thing to let go of Laura for 6 months. She leads this, 500-person location or whatever. She's really, it's really hard to let go of someone for 6 months. But you look at her and you see her heart, and she wants more training and more development. She wants to take that next step. She has seen other people in our church come back from these experiences so impacted and life changed. And so you're looking at this situation where, well, God, this girl cares so much about growing in Jesus and taking her next steps. She's a pastor of a church, and she wants to take her next steps. We have developed her pretty well, but she wants to take some next steps. And we decided to take a risk. And we said, you know what, Laura? How about this? How about we release you for 6 months? And how about you go and you do, and we'll support you. We'll keep paying your salary, and I don't remember all the details, but something like that for the next several months. That's how everybody wants to do a TTS, by the way. They keep their salary going from and going into the nations. Everybody's like, wow.
There's people watching on the live stream.
I missed that.
Emailing their head pastor right now.
Yeah, that's
you should watch this.
Yeah, and all the head pastors are like, I'll go to DTS. You keep paying my salaries. Change the church. But then she goes, right? And she has this great, and she comes back with this passion that bleeds out of her for the, it's unreplaceable. And if we would have held on to her for those 6 months, it would have been convenient. It was hard. It was challenging for us as a team or a staff to kind of keep things together, keep things moving forward without her. But when she comes back, and then she starts championing missions teams going out of the church. When she comes back and she's boosted in the area of prayer, even beyond what we could have taken her, the impact of the church. When she comes back and her heart and her passion is just like through the roof. I've seen it over and over again that people who come out of YWAM have the potential, if they do it, to have a massive impact in their churches. If they do it. Yeah. It's hard to return. But she's one of those, and she came back, and it was powerful. So why do we do it? Big picture, we're getting a sense of what God's wanting to do with Laura, and we're just trying to agree with God's path for the life, even though it's painful. And then she comes back, and it's well worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Those were great. Now you can pass it on. And then, Rebecca, you're on the other side of this. Like, you guys have a thriving community right now. And I know even like we were just getting to share that you had someone that's from his church that just came down and taught in one of your guys' schools and that kind of stuff. But also, like, you do a lot of work with the local church. You have a lot of local South Africans joining the team and stuff like that. What are you seeing when you're working closely with these churches and you grow? Like, I think, we've seen relationship year after year after year. People are coming from specific churches. Sometimes you kind of have that pipeline that gets created. Mm-hmm. When you're receiving these people with a foundation like this, with like, you don't have to go as deep in missiology. You don't have to go as deep in Bible because there's already some of that already there. How are you seeing that kind of like take you guys to the next level of what God's doing in your community?
Yeah. I think within our DTS schools, when we are receiving people from really missionally minded churches, they have so much faith. Like, there's so much maturity. They have this biblical foundation. There's actually a faith for what God's going to do because they've spent some time with him. They've been discipled well, and they become really, honestly, very catalytic in our schools. They want to serve like crazy. Like, we have to make them stop. We're like, will you just be a trainee for a second? Like, you don't actually have to run hospitality right now. So there's so much service, there's maturity. And then if they end up deciding to join us full time, there's some of just them, they're just so consistent. They've learned like how to have a real job. They're like, they know how to serve. They know how to be consistent. They continue to have faith. I'm thinking of one girl in particular. Her name is Tosca, and she did so many things at her local church in Stellenbosch. And she ran small groups for her whole church. She ran missions trips. She did sound. Like, she did so many things. And now she's serving with us, and she's such a strength in who she is as a person, and how the ways that she was discipled, the ways that she grew in her church, and how much they really poured into her to make her the woman that she is. But then she's bringing very open-handedly these gifts to us to be like, hey, sometimes in YWAM, like, we're really awesome, but sometimes we kind of like build the ship at sea a little bit, and we're kind of like, let's go do this thing. And then we're like, we don't have that part. Cool. Okay. We're just going to keep going. And I feel like the people from the local church are like, but hey, how about we slow down, and how about we think about this, this, and this? Like, let's make a plan for this. Actually, I know someone who can do this for us. Or they just help bring so much strength. They help us to slow down. They're consistent. They're mature. And they're just incredible to have with us. They think in a different way that actually really helps us to grow and to develop, to slow down, where we might just have a lot of vision and want to drive forward. They bring support and maturity to us.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that's like with Gabe as your guys' leader out there, who are schools you both get to have over the next 2 weeks. He'll be out here. And so you may get a little bit of that joke there as he shares in your schools. But I think like this is kind of like, Rebecca, I'll start with you in this, but it's kind of like this question is somewhat similar for you. Okay, this is great. They got a foundation. They go join a missions community, and they do all this kind of stuff. And, we'd say 80+% come back, which is like, then you're like, oh yeah, I'll be releasing, like 20% go, 10%, and 80% come back, that much more trained, that much more ready. But what is it then like in this space where we're going, we don't want to just be a community that just kind of like, hey, thanks for coming for 6 months, we'll send you back. What is like some ways that you guys are like, I don't know if you're planning or hoping or doing, like ways that you're like, this is the way we can continue to engage. Because it's hard. After a long time, you have thousands of people that have done schools. You can't just stay on top of those conversations always. But then even landing back in a church, how then you guys have integrated that discipleship going, because it's easy, I think that sometimes you can go, I just did this crazy things. I was in the Himalayas. I saw 1,000 people get healed yesterday before I came home. And then they come back to church and it's like, Sunday service, this, and you're like, that's both are real things. And how have you helped people kind of like, I don't know, we could maybe say like re-enter back into like, we want everything that you've gotten from this missions experience, but like, welcome back to like the day after day life. So Rebecca, you have the mic, so I'll start with you. So kind of that, like, how are you guys helping people afterwards? And then Brian, how are you helping people afterwards?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of a lot of the different training that we'll do, we do try to prepare people to go back and say, okay, you have had these wild experiences. That doesn't necessarily mean that the experiences of the people back home are less than what you've just experienced. Their life has also been incredible. Look for the ways that God has been moving in their lives and have faith for what God's been doing back home, and not try to just come back with comparison or competition. We try to hopefully help them have good language with their pastors, good language with their parents, good language with their friends, of, again, not comparing or having all the conversations be about people trying to necessarily understand everything that they went through, but being willing to share their experiences, and being willing to also understand that not everybody's going to understand fully what just happened to you. When you are seeing people saved in the Himalayas, it's really hard to sometimes translate to the fullness because it was a real experience. But there's ways that you can still share testimonies. There's ways that you can still honor what the local church is doing. And so we try to, I think, help equip people in going back home to be able to have those conversations with such humility, with such honor, but also with faith. And sharing testimonies to be like, this is what God is doing around the world. I think for some of our trainees, they probably go back to churches that are very missional. We'll bring some language even to their pastors or their local church to again support them in trying to communicate what is this YWAM thing and what did they just do. So we probably, I know we don't do it perfectly, but I think we try to set up our trainees the best for when they're going to go back home, and then especially nationally. Churches across the country, I think we try to really partner with those pastors. We try to actually physically get to those locations. We try to gather people at different times of the year. And then they always know that they're welcome back. They can come back, visit, bring friends. If they want to do a missions trip with us, we do like 2-week short missions trips all throughout the year with our university students in town. And so there's always also an availability for them to bring other people from church with them to be like, hey, can you do this? You want to do this like short-term mission trip? You might be able to do a YWAM full DTS, but come experience some of what I got to experience. So that's how we've been doing it.
Yeah, that's great.
I care a lot about this as a missionary because I do also go back to the States. I saw a painting once. Now I'm going to slaughter every detail that is about to come out of my mouth. It may or may not have been by Rembrandt.
Okay.
Probably not, but let's just say. It may or may not have been called the Missionary Report. I have no idea, but let's just pretend that's what it's called. And in the paint, I do remember the painting though, and this is true. And it was of a missionary returning, and enthusiastic, sitting on the edge of his chair, and communicating to the clergy, who are just so disinterested. But he's leaning forward with all that passion and trying to, and it's just missing. And sadly, I saw that 23 years ago before I became a missionary, and I had this sense in my mind. And yet, I because I care about the reentry process, and I know that it's hard.
Yeah.
There are certain things that are just not the same. My daughter went to Kona for 4 years. She was part of the YWAM SBS. I've seen this too. She's come back to the greatest church in all. Okay, but she's come back and to a family who really cares about reentry, but still things are different.
Yeah.
And there's grief. There's people grief. There's community grief, the kind of community that she was able to have on base and at campus. And to come out of that and into a local church environment, it's just not the same. It was so powerful. It was so life-changing. It was so special. And so she's been wrestling through it this last year, as does everybody who comes back, and has to process their grief and their changes, that this isn't that. It's not unusual, but it's still hard. Yeah. That you would go into a different season and wish things were a certain way. One of the big things that we try and help people with is this idea of not grumbling. It's really hard to go. It's really hard to be enthusiastic when things are so different. It's really easy to be like, what I experienced over here changed my life, and this is not that. And yet, God has a purpose for this, just as God had a purpose for that. And it may not be to you all that was, but it doesn't mean God hasn't called you into this mission zone with your local church. And to try and embrace it. Okay, sometimes we're called into missionary environments that aren't awesome because they're not awesome. Why we're sent there. Why does he send somebody into a church? Maybe a church that's not so flexible or so next generation attuned. Maybe it's because they need your prayers. Maybe it's because they need what God is instilling in you. Maybe they are not asking you. Maybe they're not seeking it, but it doesn't mean that God, who moves us around, it hasn't divinely placed you to have an impact. When some of the early days when people were coming in, we never went to YWAM. My wife and I, we weren't a part of that. We would see people and they would describe their situations, and they were ahead of me as the pastor in an area of prayer. That's okay, but it often happens. Praise the Lord for great training and great experiences. And yet some of those early people had to be patient with us, and they had to be like, okay, we're gonna encourage in prayer. We have some ideas. Not everything was a yes. A lot of it was out of the box, and yet because of their patient and because of their mature perspective, they had a disproportionate impact on the shape of the church over the decades. I think that's really powerful. But sometimes we're called into places that don't fit us perfectly, to have an impact that may not be exactly what we want it to be, and yet it's significant. And so returning to a local church is hard. How do we help people? Well, we try, as we can, to be a next generation designed church. In fact, we just made some changes. After 15 years, we're like, we are no longer in a millennial generation. Sorry. We are now.
I've been out.
Gen Z.
I live here. I've been out of it for a long time.
Okay, great. So we needed to make some shifts as a church if we want to stay a next generation church or if we wanted to stay a last generation church. And so we decided to make some shifts. So we're kind of mindful of the generations that are going out, and what is it that how is God. What's the best way to help them grow in their relation? I know that a lot of churches aren't thinking, what's the best way for the next generation to keep growing and maturing? But maybe as people are returning, that's one of God's opportunities. And I think that's just how we have to view it a lot of times. God is giving local churches opportunities. Some of them won't take it. Maybe a lot of them won't take it. And that's okay. Sometimes our job is to just be an opportunity for that church to respond and maybe be impacted. But we also don't want to think so much of ourselves that we're just like, wow, this whole elder board, they should change everything and do things how I saw it done, or what part of it, maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. But we're going to trust God to lead them. And we've learned that prayer is powerful, so we can pray for our leaders and we can encourage them. What we don't want to do is bring division and grumbling, and we want to just try and be about God's plans and purposes for our local context.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to jump to, again, it's kind of a last question for the two of you to then split. But in being so missional, having so many YWAMers, being so connected to, whether it be us or all of the places that people have done, mission schools and DTSs and stuff like that in your church and on staff. And then for you guys, I know how plugged in you guys are to the churches around Potch, and even more so probably across all of South Africa. And in the coming years, probably all of Africa. But,
all of Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't have a calling to South Africa, but every time I sit down with Gabe, between the cheap steak and the unending vision, I was like, I could do that.
Yes.
But how is it then that, so we're doing this. Yes, there's individuals that we want to do this. We want, if an individual comes to us, our hope is that, your hope is that they would come to a missions community and thrive, and then they'd come home. And our hope is that we just gave them a really good foundation or an elevation to where they came from to go back to you guys and thrive. How do you see, you're trying to reach Glasgow, you guys are trying to reach everywhere, but we'll just stick with Potch. How are you seeing that combination of what you carry as a missions community and the local church impacting that place? Like you're saying, you kind of said earlier, that when they come in, they help us slow down a little bit. Like we can just go 1,000 miles an hour. We need to slow down a little bit. And then on the flip side, there is that part where you're going like, I'm here, there's people I got to take care of. I can't go 1,000 miles an hour. But then having that missional connect of people going but I got to get out and go. How are you seeing, how are you hoping to see that kind of in the future continue to impact Potch and Glasgow?
Can I ask the question again?
Yes.
So the question is, how are we seeing in Potch with our base connecting with local churches to reach the city?
Yep.
Great.
No, I want you to answer for Glasgow.
Okay. I think I wasn't there with the Pioneer team 5 years ago. I came 2 years after, but they've definitely shared a lot of how they initially started. And one of the amazing things about our base is that a lot of the people that started our base actually are from that hometown, which has its pros and its cons.
Thank you, Nick.
A lot of them already had relationships with a lot of people. A lot of them got saved in university. They had really crazy testimonies and were really well known maybe for their bad choices. And so now they're coming back, they're planting this mission space. And I think one of the things that original team really desired is we don't want to just create a base that's totally isolated from the rest of this city or the rest of the body of Christ. We want and desire partnership with local churches. We have to work together to reach our city. We would be foolish to think that God would only ask us to reach the city. That would be so prideful and arrogant of us. So we were immediately how do we connect? How do we work with pastors? And so we do it in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways was just honestly a limiting factor. We didn't have anywhere to meet for corporate gatherings. We actually had nowhere to host our DTSs. So we reached out to local churches and we're like, hey, can we use your buildings? Can we partner with you in some way? And they were so generous. For the last 5 years, we have done our equivalent of a Thursday night gathering in 4 churches across town every Tuesday night. And we rotate, and every one of these 4 churches opens up their doors. And I think it's incredible because the church members of those churches usually end up coming and they help serve on our worship team. They help do evangelism with us later on in the week. When we bring the lost, we're bringing them to their churches. They're not coming to us necessarily. We want to invite the lost of our city into the local church. And so it's been this beautiful partnership, especially with those weekly services. But then we meet with the pastors and we're like, how can we reach the university in our town together? Let's do this event on the campus. Let's do these evangelism outreaches. So we really try to partner with a lot of local events. We host big events, small events. We do outreaches, but we're always keeping the local church in mind, our friends in mind, the people that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis that we're interacting with. And so I would say we're actually quite integrated in that. We did do a similar event called Exalted in our town last year. And of course, as you'll meet Gabe next week, he had a lot of vision. And he is like, we need to get everywhere. We need to get into government buildings. We need to get into every high school. We need to get into every elementary school. We need to get everywhere. And again, we were like, we can't do this on our own. Like, we're not big enough. Who can we ask? And we're like, let's ask the local church. Let's ask for them to come before they go to work in the morning. Let's ask businessmen. Let's ask teachers. Let's ask cafe owners. Let them come with us to the government building in the mornings and pray for all of the mayors and the policemen and all of these people. And so I feel like we found creative ways to interact with our local body to really help them to know they don't actually have to be YWAMers to reach their city, that they don't have to do a DTS to do evangelism. We really want to activate everybody, and hopefully we're giving them courage and opportunities to do that along with their local pastors.
Okay, so a few disclaimers. I don't necessarily want people to come back. And because we've prayed that 1,000 would leave.
Yeah.
And I actually don't, I like it when they do come back and if they want to contribute in our community, but our community has been growing. And there's a lot of people that's coming in. We have enough. What we want people then who have a heart for the nations to go to the nations. And we'd rather support them and go that way. Okay, so just putting that out there, like as if there isn't like a deep longing. Now, there's certain ones of them that have gone out that I would be like, I would like to hire them.
Yeah.
But those ones tend to lead bases in Albania or something like that. They keep going on because they're awesome and they don't want to come back. So there is that first disclaimer. But for those who do come back, and how do we keep working? Well, we did 2 missions trips in the last 35 days. One to Azerbaijan, which I'm not saying because it's streaming, and then the other one we went to Ghana, right?
Okay.
Ghana. Both led by former YWAMers, former YWAM people. They're leading these teams. They're taking other people into the nations. I'm not sure if there was other YWAMers on these trips or not, but the YWAMers who've come back have been leading mission trips for the people in their local situations, where they do things like Jesus on the streets, and they'll do this like Saturday thing, and just kind of go out and praying for people. How many local church people are walking up to people in the streets and here, let me pray for your leg? Okay, where does that come from? That comes from Kyrgyzstan or wherever you guys went on mission or something like that. And it's just that sort of thing. The worship culture in the church transformed, boosted by people coming back. And, everybody has a choice when they return home. Are they going to blend or are they going to lift? And a lot of times people, they come back and they're ready to lift it. And then when they lift it, people are lifted. It's culture changing. So there's lots of ways. I don't know that there's such a high impact in their coming back and impacting both helping our church reach the nations, helping the church reach our city, and choosing to serve. Like we have an internship that people do. And they're just like, I want to help. I want to serve. I'm coming to prayer. They're coming to prayer beforehand. I believe in prayer, so I'm going to show up to our church prayer meetings, and I'm going to bring it. So in those kinds of ways, I think it would be.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I want the band to come up, and we're going to jump into response. But how I would love to end this is for each of you to kind of pray what we've been talking about. I mean, she's just going to pass it back to you anyways. But I think, Rebecca, that you would pray kind of this city reach, like kind of global mindset that we'd carry in missions, that like, for our long-termers and for those in here that feel like they're going to stay in YWAM for a long time, that everywhere we'd go, how do we engage this city starting with the local church? Just kind of pray that for us. And then Brian, if you could pray that same kind of those that, there's a ton of people in here that are going to go back to their local churches, and that, pray for us as they head back, and how do they integrate, and how do they serve, and how do they, like you're saying, how do they lift up? And so even these things that we've been talking about tonight, if you guys could pray that over us as we end. So I want to invite everyone to stand up with us, because you're getting one of those two camps. You're either long-term missions, or you're going back and you're going to be, in the spheres, partnering with your local church long-term. But I want to give you guys each an opportunity to pray that for us tonight.
Yeah. As we were talking, I just kept thinking about Ephesians 4. So I'm going to read it, and then I'm just going to pray out of Ephesians 4. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you are called to the one hope that belongs to your call, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Father, I pray for us who are long-term missionaries in this room, Father, and I just pray, God, that we would know that we are part of one body, that we have one Lord, one Spirit. God, that we would have such a longing and a desire to really see our cities reached alongside our brothers and sisters in the local church, that there would be such humility and partnership, that there would be such invitation and opportunities. Father, I ask that there, even specifically in Harpenden, Father, I ask continued just strengthening of the partnerships with local churches. Father, I ask that this city would know what you're like because of the love that the body of Christ has for one another, that the glory of your name would be exalted because of the ways that we work together, God, that we champion each other, God, that there's no divisions amongst us. Father, I ask the lost would hunger for a community to belong to that has such love and affection and humility for one another, who walks in signs and wonders and miracles, but more because of the love that is evidenced in this city. And so, Father, would you strengthen your bride? Would you strengthen us as missionaries, God, that we would look for opportunities to work with other believers locally, to reach places we could never get into, never even have access to. But there would just be this sense, God, that you want to go into every sphere, God, into every little neighborhood, into every home. And Father, I ask that your body would be united in such love and unity to see your people reached in Jesus' name.
Father, you are our leader, and we follow you. Jesus, you lead us to the nations, you lead us to cities, you lead us to all the places, including local churches. And for God, I ask for those who you're leading into local churches, home or different local churches, God, I ask for your favor in the transition. I ask for your blessing and your favor in the transition. I pray that you would fill our hearts with peace in the transition season. That you would fill our hearts with love in the transition season. Love for those who might be thinking differently, love in situations that might be a little bit different. But I ask for joy and patience in the transition seasons. And God, I ask that you would give us effective, powerful voices to bring impact. And maybe the patience to wait for it to endure. But God, I just pray that you would bring that which you've given us into the places that you're sending us. God, that you would help us to communicate and help us to inspire and help us to lift the churches you're sending us to. God, we want to not just return with good stuff, but we want to return with good hearts. And we want to bless the churches that you're placing us in. Help us bring your goodness into these situations. Thank you for what you've done in us, for transforming our lives, and help us pass it forward. In Jesus Christ's name.